Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Confessions with Kiyoko&Kanade. I'm Kanade.
And I'm Kiyoko.
And today we're going to continue our talk on hot takes and confessions. And like I said last week, our topic this week is anime villains.
Yay! Which it's a very interesting topic, and I think it's important to talk about both the heroes and the villains.
We can talk about the evil side, you know?
Yeah, the dark side.
So, of course, we're going to start out with one of our confessions. So, I'm Kanade, and I'm going to go first with my confession. Less of last time, we're talking about, my confession was, a hero that, heroes that don't seem conventionally attractive, but, if you think about it, you know? Guys,
No.
Kyoko is still mad about that.
No, I'm not.
But, okay, so my confession is that Light Yagami from Death Note is the villain of the story, but that doesn't mean he's not the protagonist. Do you know what I mean?
He's hot.
Okay, that's not really what we're talking about. But people always say that he's the hero because since it's from his perspective, you get to see his kind of explanation or motivations for why he does bad things. But in the end, if you just look at it, right? Regardless of motivations, he is the villain because he's killing off people and all this stuff, right? He's doing the wrong thing, and they say for a good reason. But he is the villain of the show, but he's still the protagonist.
Then who would you say is the? Because I've seen this a lot talking about Death Note. Who's just the quote unquote hero? Because I think I've rewatched Death Note recently, and just rewatching it, I was on the same boat in general. It's Light is doing really bad things, but we don't have to agree with that. And I was everyone just loves L in general, right? But if you're rewatching it with that mindset, thinking about there were actually a lot of people that L himself kind of killed or sacrificed for the quote unquote greater good, which if you think about it is kind of the same argument that Light has to kill off these people for the greater good, but L also does that for their own forms of justice. So it's hard to say, because if we're saying, oh, Light is actually the villain, then the counterpart of that would be, oh, L's the hero.
That's
but
the thing, though. I don't think that a story that's actually shows each side motivations doesn't mean that anyone has to be the hero or the villain. But literally every single character in any story or good story will have these motivations that aren't simple. So if we're just looking at, because we could take each motivation and you could debate for every single character that they were the villain, that they were the hero, right? But if you just take a step back and let's not look at motivations, because it will always become the gray area will always be there because of motivations. So we just look at it from who was ultimately in the wrong and in the right. Do you know what I mean? Because it's more of he created this in the later part of Death Note, spoiler alert, but in the later part of Death Note, he kind of creates this environment where people are scared that if you get mad at this person, you want them to be gone, you can just put their name on the internet and it's he could kill you just because he thinks blah blah blah, or he's just mass killing. I think he's mass killing people in prisons, right? So you could say, I think you can argue for both sides, but if you just take a step back and be ultimately who was in the right and wrong, who had the most the arguments that you could mostly push for. Do you know what I mean? If you wanted to be on one person's side, I could be justifying Light's side, but then ultimately I'd be okay, but it's still not right. I would still be on L's side. You know what I mean? Ultimately at the end, because Loki, they're both very controversial. Not even Loki, kind of
oh no, just Loki, not killing people.
But it was kind of it was cool to see though in the series how it kind of evolved from this guy in high school, and then he went to college.
So normal, and then he wasn't.
Right. And it's it was really interesting to have a protagonist who had a god complex, because it's okay, yes, you're right, people should not do bad things and they shouldn't end up criminals, but who gave you the right to decide that they all die because everyone does wrong things? Do you know what I mean? It was just cool to see though, because someone who took that to the extreme, instead of just being oh, I think this, but I won't do anything about it. But then he got the death note and he was I'm gonna kill them. You know what I mean?
I just something that I also found really 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 interesting about again, spoilers for Death Note if you haven't finished it, but at that point in the show where he gives up the Death Note and he forgets everything that he's done to keep his innocence.
Midway-ish?
Yeah, and I found that so interesting because even at that point, he was still himself, and he had come to the conclusion that he would use the Death Note to like kill people, right?
Yeah.
But when he forgets everything and he hears about this Kira person who's killing people, he's so distraught. He's like,
No way.
what? Why would anyone do that? That's like
Because
so
he used
evil.
to be so good, guys. It's kind of sad.
I think
like,
the thing that was like quote unquote his downfall is just obviously everyone knows that Light in Death Note is insanely smart. Like he's just entirely intelligent, and like a good thing about that is that he's smart and capable. But the bad thing about that was once he came to the point where he realized what the Death Note could do, to him logically it made sense that like emotions put aside entirely. He was really intelligent, but he used that to be like, oh well, logically killing these people just makes sense, so like why wouldn't I do it?
It's kind of like, because when you won't watch a show, you want it to be really clear who's good and bad, because it's really easy to root for them if you just know they're good no matter what. Because like when it's the gray area and then you're like, okay, I want to root for them because I like them, like, and they're the protagonists, but like they did really bad things. It's like, can I half root for them?
You know, I know. I think that's the thing though, because real life issues and issues like in shows are very different. So if you end up like, obviously when I was watching Death Note, I didn't want Light to kill that many people, but at the same time, you're just interested in seeing how far he'll go.
It's okay. It's okay, kind of, because it's like a show. So like in reality, no one is dying. It's a really cool like explanation to see, obviously. But then we're thinking about like in his world, yes, he actually killed all these people, and it's like, you know what I mean? Like
maybe not.
Like whenever I see I go on TikTok and I literally see like, oh, you like Light, and it shows all of his crimes and like his like how many people he killed.
After like Eren Yeager too, they're like
all this crime,
mass genocide. And you're like, oh. I mean, yeah, but I wasn't thinking like that. But
yeah, okay. We're gonna move on to Kiyoko's Confessions. So what is your hot take?
This one is about one of my favorite anime ever, Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion. If you guys have seen it, it's an older one, but it's a very like classic. A lot of people have seen it, and like a lot of people compare it to Attack on Titan just because of the direction the show is going in. But my kind of talk, I know that Kanade has heard about this because I've ranted about it a little bit.
Hello.
But kind of like my whole like the I guess it's kind of different from Kanade's perspective for like Death Note, but in what's it called, Lelouch of the Rebellion, I would say that Suzaku Kurugi, I can never say his name right. Guy. I would actually call him the villain, which is kind of interesting because
I
think he's the villain in the story, despite him being quote unquote more like morally good. But I think it's not just because he's like the antagonist. It's because I feel like what he did in general is very like it was just detrimental to like the story. Like I think I've told you about it before. You guys know Kanade's watched like some of Code Geass. I think she watched 13 episodes. I don't know why I remember that.
13?
Yeah.
That's a lot of episodes.
Anyways, you should finish it, but that's not the point. It was just quite interesting because if you guys like don't know, just like kind of a basis thing, there's like an evil, like tyrannical like power, right? And the main character Lelouch is like leading a rebellion against that because they're kind of racist towards them.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, I remember that.
But then his best friend, like his childhood friend, Suzaku.
Yeah, I know that.
What he basically does is he goes and works for the tyrant people, and his whole ideology is
like we have to be friends.
I'm gonna change the system from the inside, as he says, as he's helping these tyrannical people literally murder his own people,
changing the system.
It's quite funny because I've seen people on the internet talk about how much they hate him or how much they like him. Like it's very, you either love him because you're like, oh, he's so sweet. He hates violence. He just wants to change the system by doing good work. And there's other people who hate him. And I am one of those. I will hate on him forever because he was so hypocritical. Even though he seems better morally, he's like, no violence, guys. Let's get over this peacefully. He is so annoying and like, he's just the villain in the plot because I feel like you can be good, you can have good intentions, but what you're doing is still ruining people's lives. You're still a villain.
I think intentions I do think actually are important because you have to know like why, like not necessarily why something, but like they were doing it because they thought it would change this or they would do this because of this. But then like you have to be realistic, okay? In like an actual society where like they're full on like they can be racist and like get away with it and kill people, and you're like I'm gonna change the system inside. genuinely, that just sounds like you're a coward who's like, oh,
Yeah.
you're telling yourself that so that you like you're not a bad person to yourself, but then you're also safe from what everything that's happening to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it just like at first I didn't really dislike him that much. I just thought it was cool, and I was like, oh, he's a knight. But I
Wow,
think
he's
it's just the
cool.
moment that it got like hypocritical when I would see Suzaku like yell at Lelouch like, "Why are you doing this? All
Yeah.
these people are dying, and you're not like doing anything to save them." And I'm just like, you're not helping either. You're literally there on. They're called Britannia, which is like
Oh yeah, I
probably
remember
means
that.
something. It's probably what's it called, right? And it's like he's being hypocritical about it, being like, you're letting all these people die when he's. I think it would make more sense if he was like in the system, actively like trying to pass laws,
Yeah,
trying
but
to
what
help.
is he?
He didn't do anything. He was just there, like he was like, stop fighting everyone when he wasn't doing anything. I think that's just
Stop.
yeah. My opinion on him is I hate him, and I think recently I saw in a comment in one of our videos being like, it was one like the one about being knighted, and they were like, "Yeah, I'm like Suzaku Kurugi now," and I'm like, I think that just like triggered something in my head because
You're
I
happy
just
about
watched
that?
him like maybe 3 years ago or something, but the amount of times I've almost thrown my phone at a wall because of Suzaku being like, "Don't you just want peace?" And I was just like,
so unrealistic though, because like the thing about it is that like unfortunately, like you have to fight your way to get things. Sometimes doesn't necessarily mean violently, like logically, right? If there's a system in place and you don't like it, then like having peace would literally keep that system in place. So if you want something to change, you have to challenge something. You have to like confront people and make either their mindset change or change it yourself, right? Which would like in like a kingdom type of system, right? Which mean like the government or the monarchy has to change, right? But like you kind of have like through like what poetry going up to them being like, "Don't fight," you know what I mean?
no,
Like it
and
doesn't work like that.
I feel like he was so hypocritical too because he kind of I feel like just from the way like in the anime that I saw it, he kind of saw himself as like a martyr in a way, or like
Ew.
because
I'm
since
a
he
symbol.
became like an honorary Britannian after he like joined the military and became a knight, right? So
Ew.
like, but
So he's hiding.
but he was still like Japanese, like obviously.
So he's hiding
So
from.
no, that's the thing though. I think he saw himself that way because he was hated wherever he went because since he was Japanese, but he was like honorary Britannian, all the Britannian people were like, "Ew, we're racist. You're Japanese." You know what I mean?
Oh no.
But what's it called when he would go to the Japanese people? They'd be like, "You betrayed us. You're
Well,
working
he kind of
for,"
did.
and then he would just be like sad about it for like half an episode. He would just be
No,
sad about
but
it.
did anyone force him to become a knight?
I know that's the thing too because I was just thinking he must think like, "Oh, I'm doing so much," but like he was literally doing nothing. He didn't do anything like in his time as a knight. He helped them kill people, and then oh, spoiler alert! I don't even know, but like something that Lelouch like he didn't know it was Lelouch at the time, but something that Lelouch had a hand in for like the rebellion side ended up killing like the girl that he loved, which is kind of like sad.
Oh,
but like
it's kind of sad.
it was kind of sad, but it wasn't really that. Like I didn't feel bad for him because he was like killing like Japanese people in the moment they killed. They're like, no, these rebels are so violent. They're killing everyone, and he's just there like,
what?
I know. That's my very heavy opinion on. I will argue about this for days. If I ever meet somebody who likes him, they better count their days.
Oh, your days are numbered. Okay, we're gonna go into the next section, which is the first time we're doing it on the podcast because this is the second episode that we actually got your guys' confessions. But okay, so first fan confession we chose ForgottenWraith 4288 for this confession, but his anime villain confession is that Shoyu Tucker from Full Metal is the best villain of the anime. Do you have any opinions about this?
I finished Full Metal like a year ago, so my memory wasn't the freshest.
If you have questions, you can
like
ask. I think I kind of remember.
Like reviewing it, I think Full Metal had so many really good villains that were just like really well made and really creepy and really scary in general. So I will say that Show Tucker was probably in my like top 3, but like probably not the first spot for me. I think because I think the way that I evaluate villains is just how well they're made and their impact on the story, and he was just kind of there and then gone. So I don't know about like in the anime, but for what he was like presented, like for the time that he had, he was definitely like the fact that he's in my top 3 and he's had like maybe a few episodes says something. He was really creepy. I was scared of him, and he had this whole like
terrified.
I was like, yeah, I think he's definitely the most creepy one to me. Like other people can be felt scary, like they'll kill you, but I'd rather be locked in a room with them than locked in a room with this guy.
I think he's like one of the people in anime that I'm genuinely like terrified of because he has like if you want to search up like a psychopath, that's literally what he is because he doesn't have feelings of remorse. He didn't feel sorry. He didn't like he did it again. He literally lost his wife to his creations and then he did again to a little girl and he did not care. Like I think it's more scary when you know they'll literally do crazy things and they don't have to think twice because they're doing it because they think it's okay. Like compared to like in every Demon Slayer episode, right? They like genuinely give these are the circumstances of why they became monsters, why they chose to become demons, why they did this, blah blah blah. And you feel bad for them because they were put in situations like in the last season I watched of like Demon Slayer like season 2 when it was a brother and sister. You felt sorry because they were like pushed to these like circumstances where they had to think like this. Well, like of course they could make other choices, right? They could have been like, oh, let's just still be good even though like we're being treated like dirt and we're poor and like we're hungry and blah blah blah, right? But like he had no excuse for like he had a family, he had a home, he had a job, but he was like, I'm gonna turn my wife and daughter into like these creatures. It's just generally terrifying because you can't even explain why he did things with like oh but he went through this and it was really hard so that's why he became like that. He's like genuinely just terrifying because he's like there are people like that out there that like legit will just I'm gonna turn my daughter into a dog thing.
And I think he just scares me a lot because of how I don't know, you know like other anime villains when they're just very like big scary people
Oh, there's
and you
like
just feel
revenge.
yeah,
That's
you
a
just feel
very
like
normal thing.
these like big scary people that they don't really feel human because they're just like these monsters, right? But I feel like the reason why he's so scary is because he seems like human and the fact that he's this evil person, he doesn't really have any like superpowers. He's not like an evil monster, but he's just like a normal person who was able to do all that.
And like you can't even explain like oh there's like no excuse you can make for them. Like I feel like in every single villain in Demon Slayer, you can kind of be like, oh, but this dude is just like genuinely like terrifying in the way like why, and then you can't explain why.
He has those scary anime like glinty glasses.
I know,
that, like,
and like the frames that they put him in, like oh my gosh, when you first discovered that his daughter got turned into that,
the way I was like
I want to rewatch that because I remember like being like this guy is like you're mad at him. You know what I mean? It's not the same as like in Fairy Tale when a villain shows up, you're like you're creepy. I don't like that you're beating up my favorite characters, but you're not like mad at them in the way that you just wish that like the protagonists win. But this one just they're like you deserve to like die and go to jail and then die again. Ooh. You know what I mean? Because it's like
light.
Oh, maybe. Okay, we're gonna read another fan confession. From Red Ghost 1285. His confession was that he thinks Endgame and Infinity War were not that good.
Okay, guys, Kanade and I have to like make a really like bad confession, and that's why I think we don't really have a solid like understanding knowledge to be able to say whether it's good or not. Because this is kind of sad, but there was obviously everyone knows a ton of hype around Endgame and Infinity War when they first came out. So Kanade and I went to watch them like in the theaters, but at that time we didn't really know that much about Marvel, and it's kind of like annoying to say that because after it was really funny. After Infinity War, we watched like all the Marvel movies in order and binged them.
It's also like a unique way to do it though, too.
Yeah, we binged them a million times. We rewatched like Infinity War again, so we were like perfectly ready for Endgame. But that's why Infinity War, if I had to be honest, I don't have enough like knowledge to say whether it was good or not at first because the first time I watched it, I did not know what was happening. I didn't even know.
But the thing is that Marvel knows that those movies had so much hype. So the point, I think one of the points was that you should have been able to watch it without any background knowledge. That's the thing about like any movie, except for like direct sequels, because like if it's like a blah 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 2, then it means you should watch the first one first. But like that one just called Infinity War, and people knew that everyone was gonna be in it. But like it should be somewhat enjoyable, right? Without background context, because a lot of people, like most people in the world, have not binged every Marvel movie and come to it like with all the context, right? So like we can both have an opinion like as we watch it for the first time and the second time. I think that like as an audience member, action is just very like entertaining in the first place. Like, you get to watch like their cool strategies and like blah blah blah, right? Like just action isn't boring because things are happening and like people are fighting and like they're arguing and like you have people you're rooting for, right? But like I think it's hard for people to say it was bad. That's why like the general consensus that it was like it was good, right? But it's hard for people to say it's bad because it has so many characters that people already have like a like background knowledge on or like a preference towards, right? Like if like a lot of girls like Tom Holland, right? And like Spider-Man, cuz he's in the movie, you're not going to be like, "Oh, like I didn't care about anyone cuz like you liked Spider-Man or like you like the Doctor Strange movies, right? And you get to see interactions between all these characters you've never seen before. So I think that like element of like everyone was in it like made it like harder for people to like analyze it in a critical way. Do you know what I mean? Like you wouldn't be excited about the plot. You're just like, oh, Doctor Strange and Iron Man are really funny when they're arguing. Do you know what I mean?
I will say though that I think like in a especially in superhero movies, the plots can always be like really dry. So I will say the Infinity War,
Dry.
like you know what I mean. It's always like, oh, there's a bad guy, and we just have to like. It's always like they fight once, they lose, and they fight again, and they win. You know what I mean? Like a lot of superhero movies can just have a very like not interconnected plot. So I think I did appreciate that Infinity War was more than that, and I, from a production standpoint, like even rewatching it, I think I really liked how everything was ordered, how they weren't all just in one place, and how it felt very now we're here, and like interesting. And I will also say that like even though I guess you should be able to watch it for the first time without like any pre-existing knowledge, it made like watching Infinity War, then going back to watch all the Marvel and Avenger movies, and then watching it again made it like a million times better. Just because when we watched like the first Avengers movie and like how do I forget his name?
Huh?
Purple guy?
Thanos?
Yes.
Are you
I
good?
always forget his name.
What?
The fact that Thanos is like at the end of the first Avengers movie, like when I first realized that, it like made my mind blow because it's like this has been in the running for so long, and it wasn't just like a, oh, let's make a movie with all of them. It felt so like linear, like it was
thought out.
like it was meant to be like Avengers, this movie, this movie, this movie. Now we're at Infinity War, and now we're at Endgame. Because I know some other like superhero movies that have sequels can feel very like, oh, it's just another bad guy.
Yeah, I would say though I enjoyed Endgame more than Infinity War. I think Infinity War is actually like I enjoyed watching it. Like not from a critical standpoint because like I'm not a like I know nothing about film. Like absolutely nothing.
What do you mean we're YouTubers?
What? That's not film. But like I know like nothing about film, so I can't say anything like critique wise because who am I to judge like Marvel? But like I enjoyed it. Like I watched it and I wasn't bored, right? But then like Infinity War literally just felt like they fought and lost everyone, which literally is what happened. But like obviously more context and like blah blah blah, more fights and all that. But like Endgame, it was really cool that like not cool, but like it was really cool to see how they did lose everyone and they didn't just. It wasn't like it was like 3 months and they're like we gotta fight again. Yeah. It was like 5 years ish, right? I think.
I have no idea.
I think it was 5 years ish. If I'm wrong, but I knew it was like multiple years that they were gone and they committed to that. They weren't just like oh, blah blah blah.
Like
and
the next day.
Yeah, they're like, we gotta get them back. Like it shows like Iron Man had like he had a second chance at it and he didn't want to lose it, so he like was like, I don't want to do it. Like you would just assume all the heroes want to get everyone back. So it's really cool to be like one hero was like, no, like it actually like I got a second chance, blah blah blah. Like that's like you never thought you just think automatically because they're heroes. They're all just gonna like automatically think that.
Like consensus with these is that I will say that I enjoyed Infinity War and Endgame, and out of a lot of Marvel movies, those would be the ones that I like the best and that I would want to rewatch because there's just a lot of things happening. But I guess like everyone has their preferences for like movies. I just think for me, superhero movie wise, this was like the height of like in general. Like even as a consensus, it's like it's gone downhill since that, and that was just like the rising point when everybody was talking about it when Because I think you can have your personal preference, but it is a fact that these movies were like such a big deal when they came out and everybody had to watch it.
Exactly, because like obviously we're not critics, so like I think all we can say is that like whether you enjoy them or not, like obviously I don't remember, I haven't rewatched them in a second, so like I can't be like, oh, this didn't make sense, because I'm sure it did. I just can't remember.
Yeah.
Right? So like generally, like me and Kyoko like to think we have high standards, but sometimes we just want things that like make us excited. You know what I mean? So like it wasn't like I enjoyed them pretty much. But yeah, we're gonna move on to the fan question. So, this also comes from ForgottenWraith 4288, but he has two questions. I think we'll go with the first one because it's more tied into anime villains. But do you think Eren Yeager is the villain or still the hero of AOT? I'll go first this time, but I think that in a story that's so complicated, it's easy to throw around, like, it's harder to throw around the words hero and villain because realistically, in our world, as well as theirs that they show, is there's no, like, you can't confine someone to good and evil. There are no good and evil people, but there are good and evil decisions and motivations, right? So, like, he is the protagonist. He's the main character. But like, if we're talking about is he the villain or the hero of AOT, I think it like changes for everything he does because he's not a good or evil person. He's like he's a person with motivations who like makes choices. You know what I mean? So like in the beginning when like he's helping everyone out, you would think he's the hero, right? Because like in that mindset, right? The Titans are the villains and they're the heroes, right? Saving everyone in their thing. So it's easier because it's like there's a very distinct good and bad. But like later on, he is doing the wrong things for like with good intentions. But that doesn't mean like you can't sum up his thing like, oh, is he like a hero or villain? Do you know what I mean? Because he is a hero in the way he wants to save his friends, but he's definitely a villain in the way he's killing like a billion people. Oh no, I'm scared. Because the thing is that I can love like people always argue this on the, like online, right? But like I love like Eren as a character, like, and I'm rooting for him because I've been watching his story from the beginning, right? So like you would like I'm rooting for him, right? But I think it shows that you can root for someone and still recognize they did something wrong, but then as long as you also recognize that these were their intentions, right? So it doesn't have to be like, oh, like I think he's a villain or a hero. Like I don't think he's a villain or a hero, but I can be like, oh, he what he did there was wrong, and I know he's good intentions, but it was still wrong. You know what I mean?
I think this question is honestly really cool because there's no like black or white answer, and I think in general, Kanade just knows that Eren Yeager is one of my favorite characters. So like I've thought about this a lot.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I just want to like that I like focusing on for Eren is just the fact that he grew up in such an environment and just an upbringing where violence and like people dying were just so normal. Like ever since he was young, it was just always
Dead,
another
dying,
person, dead, blood, Titans, dead. You know, and then his mom died, and then he was put immediately into the military. So
I can't balance. Sorry.
so I'm just saying that like he's literally been molded as a young person to believe that violence is always the answer. It's what accomplishes the most. And he was literally trained as like a child soldier. So like yes, when he was like older, obviously he's met with his own problems, but he only knows how to deal with it through like violence and
like
death.
he's never been taught another way.
Yeah.
Okay. So I hope you guys had fun listening to us answering your questions and talking about your guys' confessions. But like we said in the last episode, we're gonna have a shout out for someone that we did talk about their confession or answer their question. So today's episode's shout out goes to Gangrene Goblin WY7VH. Sorry that I didn't say that the way it's supposed to said. But yeah, shout out goes to you. Thank you for watching and thank you for commenting as well. I hope you guys look forward to our next episode that will come out next week. I won't spoil the topic yet because I feel like I've been giving a lot of spoilers lately. But I hope you guys will listen to that and be excited for when it comes out.
So, Kanade, if people have any confessions or anything in general, where should they put them?
So, if you guys are comfortable to just put them in the comments, then that's a direct way we can see them. But if you want to do it anonymously, there is a Gmail account that you can send your confession to in the About section
of our channel.
Channel. Yes. Once again, thank you to all our patrons and all like anyone who's watching. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next episode of Confessions with Kiyoko and Kanade. Yeah. Bye guys.
Bye.